Pontus, Holmberg, and Mac Hollowell have been recalled from the AHL. How does Jordie Benn fit in all of this? And have we seen Jake Muzzin play his last ever game in the NHL? What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. Now, some news broke today that is going to be actually very important affecting this team and how they move forward, and not necessarily based on how it affects the immediate roster, but moves that they might have to make down the road. And that news would be that Jake Muzzin has been placed on indefinite injury reserve. He'll be reevaluated in February where he has a cervical spine injury. Now, I mean, what we saw from the injury, it didn't look that serious, but when you take into context Jake Muzzin's injury history, what has gone on with him in terms of head injuries, back, spine, all that kind of stuff, it's no surprise that this injury is going to be evaluated over a longer period of time and given a whole lot more caution. Now, the other part of this is that Jake Muzzin is 33 years old, and you don't really want to mess with this. At this point, it's more than just hockey. It's more than just, can this guy get back on the ice and can he help us? It's, how does this affect him living the rest of his life? He's 33 years old, making $5.625 million against the Leafs cap until 2024. Now, obviously, him being put on LTIR is not going to affect that really. They can utilize that space in their ability to go over the cap and then maybe be able to acquire other players or change some things around. But the reason that this impacts things so much here is because going into this season, Jake Muzzin was a player that was looked at as a guy who was going to be a tipping point on defense. Now, when I say that, I mean, we looked at Jake Muzzin as, how is he going to come back this season? Because there was a general assumption that Jake Muzzin, within a longer offseason, being able to get back to full health, he might be able to go back to being the defenseman he was when we first brought him here. And now, if he was that, it was going to alleviate the Leafs' defense and their need to go out and acquire other pieces or be forced to have Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren step up. It was going to alleviate that and make it not so pressing. Maybe they didn't have to make such a jump and be forced to make that jump. Maybe they could just make that jump naturally. But Jake Muzzin obviously struggled a little bit to start the season, and now this injury is going to be a major setback. Regardless of how you look at this team's defense right now, Jake Muzzin not being in it, given that what we thought he could be, it's a huge hit to this Leafs defensive core. Now, this leads me to believe that this Leafs team is going to need to make a move. This is no longer a situation of like, hey, maybe he'll come back. Hey, maybe this D as is can be good enough. I don't think so. I think we're in a situation where we need to go and make a move, if nothing more than to have some type of depth, because as I also mentioned in the opener, TJ Brodie goes on injured reserve. And we've seen situations where we've had numerous defensemen go down at the same time. In some sort of sense, you need to be protected against this. And at some point, you're going to run out of the ability to just say, hey, we can call up that guy from the AHL, because it's going to get more intense. It's going to get more serious. And you're going to be in a position where you have to win games more frequently, or it's going to be much more pressing. So to me, this tells me that $5.625 million of Jake Muzzin's money is not going to be used on 5 AHL players who are going to cost just under $1 million against the cap to bring them up. That can't happen. The other thing here, the Leafs are maxed out at 50 of 50 possible contracts that they can use. Now, mind you, their roster size is under the max limit. That's the amount of guys that they carry on the NHL squad. They're only at 21 of 23. But before you go and jump on the Leafs for these moves and these decisions and the fact that they're over the cap using LTIR, 18 NHL teams right now are over the cap and using LTIR to do so. It's just not that uncommon anymore. So when you're going to sit here and say, well, the Leafs made bad decisions, the Leafs did this, the Leafs did that, maybe they did, maybe you disagree with some of that stuff, but don't jump on the fact that they're over the cap and sit here and say they're the only team who are maxed out and over this, the limits or the rosters or all that kind of stuff. They are not. The Leafs are one of 3 teams, including Vegas and Philly, with max contracts. So, I mean, that is a smaller sample of group or a smaller size of teams that are doing so, but 14 NHL teams right now are also under the max roster size of 23 players. So it's just a common practice at this point for teams in the NHL, and many of those do include teams who are over the cap right now using LTIR. So with Jake Muzzin, wishing him all the best. I'm not even wishing speedy recovery necessarily at this point, because you just want the guy to be okay for just at least the rest of his life. A cervical spine issue sounds very serious. It's quite concerning, so you hope that he can be okay. And that, I mean, obviously him getting back on the ice would be his dream to be able to do that and compete for another Stanley Cup here, do so in Toronto, but it looks like that is not likely going to be a possibility, and there is a chance that this could be the end of Jake Muzzin's career. Now, moving on to some other news that has happened here today. TJ Brodie going on to the injured reserve. He's going to miss the next 2 games, which would be Tuesday against the Pittsburgh Penguins and Thursday against the New Jersey Devils. He would be eligible to return, I believe it is for Saturday's game against the Buffalo Sabres, but unknown if he'll do that yet. I would imagine they would like to ease him back into things. There's no need to rush him. The guy's out with a groin injury or an oblique injury right now. He was a game time decision before Saturday, so it tells me it's not that serious. You're not putting him on LTIR. You're just using that injured reserve spot. So you're likely just trying to get him in a position where he feels like he can be back at 100% when he comes back in, which all in all, I think is a smart move. You also have the option of calling guys up, as they did with Mac Hollowell and Pontus Holmberg. I think those are good guys to just have around the team. And you might be able to get them an opportunity to get into this lineup at some point to see if they might be able to help us at all here. Now, the other thing that goes on here is the Jordie Benn situation. Jordie Benn has played 1 game with the Maple Leafs at this point, and I can't imagine he's going to score a goal per game for the rest of the season, or that he is going to score or shoot the puck the most amount of times of any Leaf and tie Austin Matthews for the most shots on goal in every single game that he plays for the rest of this season. That being said, Jordie Benn looked like he had a little bit of a spark plug in him in that game back. He was a physical guy. He wasn't afraid to clear the front of the net, which I was really happy to see. Although he did take that 1 penalty, I'm not overly upset by it. I think that was one of those situations where it's kind of like, you've watched Leafs teams year in, year out, go to the front of the net and just be pushed around, and everyone always says, why can't we bully guys around? Why can't we push guys out? There's a guy who's willing to do so. If he's going to take a penalty here and there to send a message, now that wasn't necessarily sending a message in that last game, but if he's going to do that and he's going to push guys around, throw guys around in front of the net, I'm going to be happy with it, as long as it doesn't become a dumb habit by Jordie Benn. So I'm interested to see him get more of an opportunity to play in this lineup. Interested to see him get some more ice time. He was pretty good at killing penalties, blocking shots, making hits. He seems like a physical guy who might have some presence to him. Austin Matthews was beyond excited when Jordie Benn scored that goal. So hopefully this guy can continue to bring some presence to that locker room, and maybe it puts us in a position where we don't necessarily need that ultra physical guy, but we could be able to go and get a defenseman who could make a significant impact in other aspects of the game, or some guy who's higher up, but you don't need that like meathead kind of guy from outside, because hey, maybe Jordie Benn is that guy in the best way possible. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. I am interested to see if maybe this Pontus Holmberg and Mac Hollowell are able to get chances to get into this lineup. I would imagine probably not, based on the way things have gone here. But all in all, Jake Muzzin will be out indefinitely, where he'll be reevaluated come February. That is a long time for this cervical spine injury that he has dealt with. It is potentially the end of his career. So, I mean, best wishes to Jake Muzzin. Hopefully he's going to be able to be okay, just at least in the rest of his life, and can get some type of quality back out of this and doesn't feel the need to be on the ice and put himself in danger. But if he is okay, he would be a welcomed addition to come back. TJ Brodie put on IR, will miss the next 2 games minimum, Tuesday against Pittsburgh, Thursday against the New Jersey Devils. He'll be reevaluated after that. Maybe he can come back, but until then, Jordie Benn just might be our guy, a good guy to replace, and he could be potentially the less skilled Jake Muzzin in all of this. So we'll see what happens there. see how this all plays out, Leafs fans. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to hit subscribe on this channel, like this video, turn on notifications so you get notified every time a new video drops, as well as every time we go live on this channel. So hit subscribe, hit like on this video. I will see you guys very soon. Keep believing.